Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Joining us on the phones, Republican strategist, good friend of the program, Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you today?
Doing great, Chad. Good morning.
Glad to have you on the program. There's a lot that we can get into. I want to start off, though, and I know you included it in your morning email today, the Must Read Texas newsletter that you send out. There's a story in the Wall Street Journal today about the headline of it, in Texas, a surprise fight for control of the state house. And they make the implication that this whole debacle, I guess you could call it, with Bonin, they say it could turn Texas, at least the Texas House, blue. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I talked to a reporter about that about a week ago. I think the argument is that the margin is so narrow to begin with. It's 9 seats. The Democrats take 9 out of 150 net in 2020. They will take the House back for the first time since 2002. And so, look, do I think that anyone is going to vote for one party or the other on the issue of, what happened in that meeting that Speaker Dennis Bonin had with conservative activist Michael Quinn Sullivan? No. I think the argument that can be made is if the Speaker, who's the most powerful Republican in the Texas House, is sidelined, is basically unable to politically help Republican candidates, unable to raise new money, that weakens the chances Republicans have to hold the House. And so the stakes are really high. I don't necessarily think that means he's going anywhere. There's really not a mechanism to force him to resign. And really right now, I think all members are really looking to see what the Texas Rangers investigation ultimately concludes.
Yeah, and I mean, he's still out there raising money, right? He's still doing fundraisers.
He is, and I should point out that he fortunately did a really large amount of fundraising before all this happened, and transferred $3 million into a new PAC he set up to help Republican incumbents. So if he doesn't raise another dollar, he's got $3 million to spend this cycle. But I think House Republicans think it's going to cost quite a bit more than that, given that you have some very expensive seats in places like Dallas and Houston. And honestly, the map of Texas House seats that will be in play in the general election could be 20, 25, even 30 seats. So he's got to keep raising money. He has been. He obviously is in a weaker political position than he was. There was an interesting test vote just a couple days ago where a Bonin-aligned state representative ran for caucus vice chair, and a non-Bonin, and I don't want to say anti-Bonin, but sort of a non-Bonin candidate ran, and the Bonin candidate won. Jim Murphy from Houston was able to win over a candidate from the Hill Country named Andy Murr. So that may show that he still has some standing among the Republicans in the Texas House, but it certainly doesn't mean he's out of the woods.
Matt, as we stand here today, I know we're far away from the election, mm-hmm. but what would you put the percentage chance at of the Texas House turning blue?
Well, look, I think that the challenge the Democrats have is they don't need 9 seats. They're going to need like 12 or 13 or 14, because I think there's 4 or 5 seats they really shouldn't have. The Republicans are going to get back. I think there's a seat in Hays County, just southwest of Austin, that I think will come back. I think maybe at least one of the seats in Williamson County will come back. There's a couple others you could put on a list. So the challenge for them is they don't need 9. They're going to need like 13 or 14 or 15 to get the majority. I think that's probably too high of a bar. They won 12 seats last year. They won 5 seats the year before, so that's 17 over 2 years, over 2 cycles, excuse me. So I don't know. I'd probably put it at like 25 or 30%, something like that. But it's obviously going to be, depend a bit on the presidential top of the ticket performance and who the Democratic nominee is and how Trump does.
The lieutenant governor, he surprised a lot of people by pretty much coming out against what the NRA had been stating about expanded background checks, and he and the NRA kind of butted heads. I think over the weekend, the state committee that got together, they unanimously condemned red flag laws and enhanced background checks. Matt, when we talk about GOP unity, it just doesn't seem like right now there's a lot of unity within the Texas Republican Party.
Well, and look,
other than wanting to win.
Yeah, other than wanting to win, and look, I mean, this sometimes happens when you're, coming out of a session where there's different views on what should have happened, and then you also now are really entering into a primary season, so there is going to be some division. And honestly, there'll be division on the other side as well. I mean, there's 8 or 9 Democrats running for U.S. Senate. They're not going to all be thrilled with whoever gets ultimately nominated. Some people are going to be disappointed. So this isn't all that unusual, but you're right. It is unusual to have the state party and the lieutenant governor on different sides of a fairly fundamental issue for conservatives. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know necessarily that this is likely to come to a head because I don't think there's going to be a special session. And so this will get resolved in January of 2021 when the House and Senate and the governor, begin to work through that session. We'll see if Lieutenant Governor can ultimately sell his position, which is not to regulate, private sales between family members or even between friends. It's to require a background check on private sales between strangers. I do think that if our system should not allow someone who fails a background check to then purchase a gun from a stranger privately, right? If that's the case, then why even have background checks at all? But obviously, you want to not infringe on the rights of law-abiding gun owners and the constitutionally protected Second Amendment rights that we all have. And so I think what the Lieutenant Governor is envisioning is a system where gun stores would allow for background checks to be conducted in private sales between strangers. So there's no new registry, no new bureaucracy, fairly simple process, and that's kind of, I think, what he's envisioning. But again, whether he can see that, sell that or not remains to be seen.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's move on to the national side of things. Beto O'Rourke last week, it seems like he's been taking some hits after his, hell yes, we're going to take away your AR-15 comment. And he's been taking hits, obviously, from the Republican side, but, Matt, he's been taking some hits from the Democrat side as well. And it seems like a lot of Democrats are unhappy that he went there and he said, yeah, we're going to do gun confiscation.
Yeah, and I think what Democrats are mad about is Beto said the quiet part loud, right? I mean, this is honestly what Republicans and folks on talk radio and cable news have been saying Democrats believe for quite some time, and that this is ultimately where it's going to go. And look, he is taking a position which is unquestionably a disaster in the general election, and he is sort of selfishly using it for his own benefit in a Democratic primary. Trying, every which way he can to continue to be able to stay in the race by raising money and growing his donor file and earning media. And look, I actually think, given that the far left is excited by his proposal, he may get a small bump out of the last debate. But you're right. I mean, Democrats have come out. Dick Durbin, the number 2 Democrat in the Senate, U.S. Senate, Democrat of Illinois, said, get real about the idea of I think that was actually about Kavanaugh, excuse me. But on the Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, a close ally of Joe Biden, said this is not helpful and it's never going to happen. It's never going to pass. So yeah, you have seen Democrats kind of step forward and say, no, this is not our position and it's not helpful. But it's something Beto's going to continue to say. Chad, you're actually a participant in this debate, as you know, because in April 2018, after a number of these shootings had already happened, but obviously before El Paso and before Odessa, he told you that he owned an AR-15 and that he does not believe AR-15 should be confiscated, that the gun owner should be able to have that gun. So he needs to explain what changed. He'll say El Paso, but there were other shootings where AR-15s were used.
Right.
And so, look, to me, what changed is he was running for statewide office in Texas, and that was a losing position in Texas in a general election in 2018. He is now running for president as a Democrat, trying to get through the primary. That is what changed. So it is it's political motivation that changed his position on this, not purity and not any other higher calling.
Have the top 3 Democrats, Biden, Warren, and Sanders, have they said yay or nay on what O'Rourke had to say?
Good question. I'm not 100% sure. I don't believe any of the 3 of them have endorsed what he said. And he's sort of wiggled around what he said as well, because he's kind of said, well, we're not going to confiscate, we're not going to send police to people's doors. people will just voluntarily comply once that's the law. And, of course, that's not going to be the case. You'll have some people that comply if that were the law, but a large number wouldn't. So I don't know whether they've all been asked, point blank what their position is. They should have been asked that night, given how incendiary his comment was.
Yeah.
And honestly, I wish on Meet the Press on Sunday, Chuck Todd had been prepared to ask about Beto's position in 2018. I mean, why did Beto continue to own an AR-15 after it had been used in shootings all over the country over the last 5 or 8 years? So I just think it's a totally ridiculous position. There would never be 60 votes in the U.S. Senate for it, but he's doing it for himself. And I think the more you watch Beto O'Rourke, the more you realize he is in all of this for himself.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, Matt. As always, appreciate your time. Tell folks about your newsletter and also your podcast.
Yeah, over 3,000 Texans every weekday morning receive our news summary from around the state. It's called Must Read Texas. We take all the news, put it in one clean, easy-to-read email, send it out by 9 a.m. You could sign up for a free one-week trial at mustreadtexas.com. And the podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's available in the iTunes Store, on Google Play, on Stitcher, and on Spotify. Most recent episode is with Garrett Graff, who last week had the #1 book in the country on Amazon, he's written an oral history of 9/11 that is absolutely fascinating, and had a great conversation with him, so check that out.
All right, Matt, as always, appreciate your time. We'll visit with you next time.
Sounds good. Take care.
Have a good one. That's Matt Mackowiak, Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.